Well, here's a do not worry about what you will eat apple pie. First, you'll need 220 grams of butter cut up into little squares. So they're small to remind you they're like the grass here today and gone tomorrow. But here's the trick. You put the butter in the freezer for 15 minutes with some water. That was quick. To keep it cold, to remind us that God will give us the clothes we need to keep us warm. Now, actually, that is true, but that's so that the dough is easier to handle with those cold ingredients added to 2.5 cups or 300 grams of plain flour. The flours of the field are dressed in splendor, but this flour is plain, and plain clothes is maybe what God will give us sometimes. He will give us what we need. The recipe said to add salt. I didn't add salt because 1, we are God's people and therefore salt and light, and 2, I use salted butter. I don't know why recipes ask you to use unsalted butter and then add salt. Makes no sense. And then of course though I did add 2 tablespoons of sugar. It said 1 to 2 tablespoons. I added 2 because it's no use storing away the sugar in barns. And then you process it because just like Jesus' teaching, these things take time to process. And then here's a bonus recipe. While you wait for that 15 minutes, here's coffee. Grind the beans, turn on the machine, heat and froth the milk. That's your bonus recipe, you see. You are seeking apple pie and other things turned up. When you seek the main thing, other things turn up. Well, next, I process the butter so the mix is like breadcrumbs with the food processor. Then water magically appears. Wow, we are provided for, in this case with 7 tablespoons of water, which you'll put into the food processor. Maybe try 6, then 7. You want to get this kind of consistency that you see. That's maybe even a little thick. And then we clean the space because do not worry about what you will eat, but make sure you worry about whether it's clean. We don't want germs. We want to care for the people we're serving. So clean it, and then you need to shape the flour into 2 round discs like so. There you go. And again, put them in the fridge. I put them in for an hour once I got there. Come on, Paul, move it along. Now the sauce to go with the apple filling, we need to melt 100 grams of butter and stir that up and heat it. We also add 2 tablespoons of plain flour and cook that together with a quarter of a cup of water, and you should get a really nice consistency in the end. Let's have a look. Of course, getting consistency will take time, just like it takes time for us to get consistent with trusting in God, that He'll give us all the things we need. But there you go, there's the consistency. I should also probably mention there was 2/3 of a cup of sugar, and here we have 1 kilogram of Granny Smith apples. Now make sure you peel off those little stickers whose main purpose seems to be to get peeled off. Now this is probably the funnest bit. You get a peeler and corer and get your apple and twist it through, and there you go, it's been cored and peeled, and then you just cut it down the middle, and that will enable you to fill a bowl full of apples. Next, cover all the apples with 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, stir it around, make sure it's coated, and then get the sauce and coat the apples again. You'll notice that we do labour and spin. That's okay. Jesus was concerned we don't worry too much about that. Now we get the first disc, we roll it out with the rolling pin, and then you can use the rolling pin, here we go, to transfer the bottom layer of pastry into the dish, and then you fold it into the dish like so and put in the apples. Now add extra apples for an extra part of a pie here, you see. You may even have an extra measure provided for you. And then you get the top bit of the pastry and you cut it into 10 strips like so. And then you can put them on the top to make a lattice effect. If you want to know how to do that, you can talk to me later because there's not enough time in this video to explain. And just tidy it up around the edges. Now you can brush some egg onto the top to make it nice and shiny, but I'm too cheap. Sometimes we do worry about whether we'll have enough, and I used milk followed by some raw sugar on top because, well, that's yummy. Then you put it into the oven for 15 minutes at 220 degrees Celsius, but after that 15 minutes, turn it down to 180 degrees, leave it in, set a timer. That could be really helpful so you don't forget. You do not want to burn that good work, and you have a yummy apple pie. Now at this point I will read from Matthew 6. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. For so treasured was this pie that I kept a leftover piece in a fridge, and when I went to enjoy it, it had been stolen by a relation who shall not be named. So Jesus tells us the truth. Store up our treasures in heaven.